Welcome. I was hoping for more people because we have new opportunities here, but you guys will be the ambassadors to get the word out to everyone. But welcome to a session on radon. And the reason we're calling it New Opportunities, you'll find out in a few minutes. But literally, it's new opportunities addressing radon, and I'm personally quite excited about it because I've been trying to work on radon for 20 plus years. And how many of us done my online course on radon? Anybody? One, two. Okay, well, your assignment. I'm a school teacher, former school teacher. So I give homework. And there'll be a quiz, but the homework is to go do my online course after this because we'll need to flesh out a lot more detail. But Ryder's going to give us a quick overview of radon, and then I'm going to do a few demonstrations and also talk about the new opportunities, and it's related to another federal agency, HUD. So with that, we'll let Ryder tell us what radon is. It's right there.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you got it?
Yeah. All right. So, hi, everyone. As Mansell mentioned, my name's Ryder Freed. I'm with US EPA. I'll just forward it one. There we go. So, Mansell's the presenter with ITEP, the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals, director of a couple programs, environmental education and indoor air quality in tribal communities. And I work in our Region 9 office in San Francisco in the Air Division. I'm the Air Radiation Program Coordinator. So I'm going to be kicking us off. Some of you might not know what radon is, so I'm going to start right there. So this is me when I started. What is radon? I didn't know. And I'm from California, which is pretty common for us in the West not to know what radon is. So one reason you might not know what radon is because it is colorless, it's odorless, it's tasteless. So you're not going to see it, right? The only way to know if you have radon is to test for it. So the reason we're interested in radon is because it causes lung cancer. It's the second leading cause of lung cancer after smoking. And it is also a gas, and it is radioactive. Therefore, it causes lung cancer. So this is a little busy slide, but you can see on the right, there's a piece of rock. There's uranium in it. So uranium is naturally occurring in rocks, and rocks break down. They turn into soil. Soil, then water flows through it, so it picks up some uranium. So you can have radon in all of these things. As uranium breaks down, this is called a decay chain. Radon 222 is in the middle there. It's in the middle of the decay chain, and that is, like I said, a gas. So in that form, it's a gas, so it can seep up into things. So it's everywhere, and it's naturally occurring. So it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just good to be aware of it and know what it is and how to protect yourselves. So how does it get into buildings? Like I said, it's a gas, right? So it's going to be coming up from the soil. It's going to be seeping into your house. If there's, pressure, negative pressure, it's going to be wanting to come up. All the gases come into your house, and then you're going to be hanging out in your home, and you're going to be breathing in. So people worry about water. Radon can be in water, but most common, you really want to test the air in your home, and it's going to be coming from the soil. So for private wells, you can also test your well water for radon as well. But you really just want to first and foremost, test your home for radon. Has anyone tested for radon in their house? If you raise your hands. All right. Awesome. Nice. Another homework assignment. All right. Yeah. So we can go over how to do that. So as we're talking about, like, what can you do? What can you do as an individual? Like we're talking about, since you can't see it, you can't smell it. Unlike Mansell did a presentation on mold, you can smell it, you can see it. Radon's not that. You can't do any of those things. So you really just have to test. So you can get a test kit from a state radon program. You can get it from a home improvement store, and it takes about 48 hours. You place it out. Mansell will go over this, but you place it in your home, somewhere you spend a lot of time, not in a bathroom, not in a kitchen. You'll wait 48 hours, you send it off to the lab, and they'll tell you what your radon levels are. So Mansell will go more, and there's more instructions for how to do it. They'll they'll have a little instruction thing of how to do it in the kit itself. And it's a great, if you have kids or someone, to do it with them, make it a little fun kind of like science experiment with them or science project. It's a great thing to do with them as well. So you want to test your home or test your building or school, wherever, whatever building you're in, and then fix it. So if you do have levels that are above EPA's action level, which is, it's measured in picocuries per liter, but basically the volume of air, if it's above 4 picocuries per liter, then we recommend that you fix your house for radon or fix the building for radon. So that's something on the individual level that people can do. So pretty straightforward. Mitigation is also pretty straightforward. It obviously costs money, which can be a hindrance to some folks to get their houses fixed. And there are some ways to get that covered with different grants and things like that. Unfortunately, EPA doesn't like to fund it. So that's what we do best. We show you there's a problem, and then you're out on your own. But there are some other funding mechanisms for that. So as government agencies, right, what can you do as a tribal program? What can you do as an environmental program? You can do a radon survey. You can implement a radon program. So these involves educating people in the community, right? What is radon? Should I be afraid of it? Do I have to sell my house? Like, what it is exactly, how it gets in your home, things like that. Testing people's homes, right? So they know if there's a problem or not. You can do that with a lot of these radon programs or surveys, and then provide technical support to people. So if they have questions about it, right, you can answer those questions for folks on what they should do or how to test. So really, like, kind of the bread and butter, I put a lot of things on the slide. The bread and butter really is like in this bottom part right here. So EPA funding for how to do these radon surveys or how to fund a radon program, it will be through the General Assistance Program. So there's been a lot of meetings about that at this conference. So hopefully you all know what that is. The cool thing about the GAP grant, General Assistance Program grant, is that there's no match for those programs. So you can go ahead, like, do we have a radon issue in our community? You can use the GAP grant to fund that, do kind of initial survey, see what the levels are, that sort of thing with that money. Really straightforward. You can just pull it all into one grant. So generally, I recommend doing that for tribes that don't know the levels, because it is just so straightforward. There's no match. You guys can just do it like pretty quickly and easily. EPA also has the state and tribal indoor radon grant program, or SURGE. The issues with that is it requires a match of 25%, and then it goes up to 40%. So for most tribes, it's cost prohibitive. So I generally don't promote that one as much, just because I know the cost issue. However, recently, if you are a tribe with a PPG and you want to apply for the SURGE grant, the state indoor radon grant, you do not have to have a match, but that's only if you have a PPG. So that's a performance partnership grant, which means you have like a bunch of grants rolled into one, basically. So if you have a PPG, there's no match for the SURGE. So that's new for the SURGE program. So that's really what I wanted to get out for any tribal programs that have a PPG. So like I also mentioned, these grants do not fund mitigation. So that's pretty key, right? If we're trying to protect people from getting lung cancer from radon, we really need to mitigate. Knowing the levels isn't enough. So different agencies have money for that. USDA has some different like rural assistant programs to fix up homes, things like that. Mansell will talk about some other programs through HUD. We'll be addressing that mostly. So I'm gonna now hand it over to Mansell to talk about the HUD stuff. That's it. That's all I got. Yeah. Well, no, I'm joking. I got one more slide. Sorry. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure if you were awake. I guess the highlights didn't show up. So we're in Region 9. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of the funding. We have funding. I highlighted it, but the highlight didn't show up. So it's generally been about $500,000 a year. It just got kicked up. We're getting more money now. It was 2023 was 757. 2024 it was like 685 that we got in Region 9. So we have more funds for the state indoor radon grant if folks are interested, if tribes. So we are also now doing like a 10% set aside in Region 9 for tribes if they're interested in this program. So currently the only tribe that gets this grant fund is Navajo Nation. With the GAP program, there's a bunch of tribes that are doing radon work with the GAP program. So there's examples of that. There's QAPs online. We have a QAP template. You will have to do a QAP, unfortunately. So these are some other resources. We updated our the Surge Radon Grant Program handbook. So what can you fund under that? How do you apply? How do you do SAM.gov? Anything about how to apply for a federal grant will be in there specifically for this grant as well. Can we pay for, et cetera. And that's the general site for the state indoor tribal radon grant. And then Kansas State, we have an MOU with, and they support tribes. Whether or not you have a radon program, if you have questions about radon, they will assist you and help you with any questions you have. So that's a national resource for any tribe, any state program, any person in the nation, they will assist you. So they're really, really knowledgeable. They work on this all the time, so they know a lot. And now I will actually turn it over to you, Mansell. Sorry about that.
You had my heart going. So yeah, she mentioned Kansas State University, and I've had the fortune of working with them for a number of years, and they're very supportive. They're very interested in working with tribes, and we had them at our NTF National Tribal Forum last May, and they are already leaning forward to be in our May 25 conference, and it's here in California, specifically San Diego County, and there's a flyer out on my table of save the date. So if you are interested in air quality or developing air quality, I'd encourage you to come to that conference, because that's tribes from all over the nation working on air quality. And if you're specifically interested in radon, which after hearing from her about second leading cause of cancer, you ought to at least perk up your ears a little bit, then we're anticipating we'll have a full day of training in conjunction with that conference. And there's other training opportunities. So we have 2 homework assignments so far, just reviewing for you. We've got test your, so I've got the test kits up here. I think I have enough, but if I don't, I'm happy to mail it to you. So if you don't get a test kit, you just gotta email me. So I'll put a stack of cards here, and I'll mail you 2 for your homework assignment. After that, you're gonna have to work on where you get them. But like Ryder said, there's different opportunities. Some states are more generous and have free radon test kits. And you have to do some searching for others. Like anybody here, let's see, we wouldn't have anybody here from New Mexico, because if you are from New Mexico, you're in the wrong place. But New Mexico is, for example, a state that works with tribes and actually gives them an allocation of radon tests to use at their tribal level. So that's an example. I don't know, California? They have them for free then to individuals. Okay, so that's more to individuals. But anyway, actually the easy part is testing, although you need to know how to do it and understand the results and et cetera, but that's the easy part. As Ryder said, the more challenging part is to figure out the mitigation. Well, an interesting player has come into this, and I first of all want to tell you these slides were made by HUD, okay? So they're really boring, but I'll try to liven it up a little bit for you. So this is a new policy they're putting in effect for tribes regarding radon. And it's not going to take effect until January of 26. And that's because when they introduced it to the tribal housing offices, they all threw up their arms and said, no way, we can't do this and we won't do this and whatever they said. Anyway, I wasn't there, but they weren't very happy. And so HUD made a concession and said, well, we'll delay implementation. We're not going to let you get away with it. So the rest of the country is already doing this for any HUD buildings, housing, that kind of stuff. But for tribes, we got a little bit of time. Now, what I propose that we do with that time is that us environmental folks start talking to the tribal housing folks. And I'll give you some pointers here about how those conversations might go. But that's the new opportunity, is to work collaboratively with your housing to address healthy homes, and they pay for it. How can it get better than that, right? Now, of course, that's part of the reason that the tribal housing offices are so irritated about it, because HUD's not giving them any more money. They're just saying it's important to have healthy buildings. We all know that. And if you find radon, you have to fix it, and you have to use HUD funds to do that. So they put it out in their CPD notice. So if you're taking notes, write that down, because when you go talk to your tribal housing office, if they don't already know about this requirement, which many of them won't, then tell them to look it up in their notices from HUD, and it's there. And many of them already know about it, but they're trying to ignore it, or they know about it and they're very unhappy. So this gives you a chance to come to the rescue and help out housing with a new requirement they got from HUD. So bottom line of what the requirement is tribes are now required to consider HUD in the environmental review process. Now, I'm not going to try to teach the environmental review process, but it's something that housing departments have already been doing and will continue to do. And now they have to add radon specifically to that environmental review. So this is the new requirement for them. They've been doing these for some time. And, you know, the idea is that we build healthy buildings, but now they've got to consider radon. Now the tricky part of it is there's, I call them loopholes, but there's like special situations and considerations and lots of loopholes. It's very different than the expectations, for example, from EPA. So just to review, many of you said you weren't familiar with radon. EPA, it's entirely a voluntary program, every step of the way. It's voluntary to test. It's voluntary to fix it if you test. There's no requirement just because you get a positive test that you actually fix it. You can just ignore it, which is what tribal housing offices have been doing for the last 4 decades. We really started working on radon in the 80s. They want to ignore it, and many of them do. I've worked with some tribes that they do actually work on it, but most of them want to ignore it. So I've been on the phone with the HUD headquarters like 5 or 6 times trying to figure this out, because trying to wrap my head around this. So the way it works is if they're doing anything to the building, and HUD doesn't build just houses, they build community buildings and other things. If they're doing anything to a HUD building, fix a window, replace a roof, then they have to consider radon. Now, what does that mean on the ground? Well, that's where you get loopholes and kind of convoluted, I call convoluted reasoning. And I'm sure the tribal housing offices will try to exercise as many of those loopholes as possible. So your job is to make sure that they don't. And of course, it's your choice. I mean, it's a tribal government choice. So you might want to communicate with your leadership about how you want to go about implementing this, because again, in general, the housing offices aren't particularly happy about this. They don't really want to do it. They're kind of being forced by HUD, and HUD built in enough loopholes that I could see them avoiding it. So, with your encouragement and talking to leadership, you can decide how you approach it. Because from the EPA side, which is where you're working, it is strictly voluntary every step of the way. But from the HUD side, they're required with these convoluted loopholes, which I'm not going to go into entirely, but we can cover a few of them. Now, one of the things that HUD did tell them, just like Ryder said, is that the only way to know if you have radon is to test. So HUD agrees with EPA on that one. They also acknowledge the ANSI and ARST standards for testing and mitigation. So we're in agreement on those. We also recognize what we commonly refer to as DIY testing, which is what these are. Now, you as a tribe could be using them as part of your radon testing program if you choose to, although there's lots of options. But this would be called the DIY, which is basically the home occupant doing their own tests. And you all have an assignment to do that, and I'll show you quickly how to use those tests. Then they talk about continuous radon monitoring devices used by trained staff. Well, that phrase, continuous monitoring, if you don't know what that is, there's a bunch of them around. And so if you need help figuring it out, we at ITEP can help you, Ryder can help you. At ITEP, I have a radon professional. In fact, she helps write the standards that can help us with that. But the interesting thing for me was to try to figure out what trained staff was. And the tendency has been for some people to assume that that means certified. But that's not what HUD says. What HUD says is the tribe figures it out. Okay, so you decide what trained means. So at ITEP, we're happy to help. KSU wants to help. As this is implemented, I'm sure that we're going to create other opportunities. I'm working with people that want to get involved and be prepared to do this training. So I'm sure there's going to be options developing for how to do this training. And if you want to get certified, it's a good thing. But it's not required by HUD. Okay, so I want to make that distinction. Although if you get certified, you could hire yourself out to your local neighbor, non-tribal neighbors to do their work for them, or other HUD funded housing in your region, you could hire yourself out to help them. So there might be advantages to getting certified, but it's not a requirement. The requirement is to be trained. And the tribe decides what trained means. So these will be decisions that you need to make at your tribal leadership level. One of the things I would recommend you be careful about is if the housing department decides to do their own testing, an advantage of that, nobody listen, all the EPA people cover their ears. The advantage of that is you wouldn't have to do a QUAT if the tribal housing office is doing it. But a disadvantage is you got to be careful, and this is where tribal leadership needs to be involved, is you want to make sure that whether they're certified or not, that they're adequately trained to know what they're doing this testing. It's not hard to do it right, but it's easy to get it wrong. Does that make sense? So you want to make sure, that the people truly are trained. And if the HUD staff, the tribal housing staff understand the requirements from HUD, they're going to know that they don't have to be certified and they just need to be trained, and the tribe decides what that means. So This is where you're going to need to go back to tribal leadership and make sure that you as a tribe decide what it means to be trained. Then the mitigation I've already alluded to, but once they have a test over 4 picocuries, and if they're going to do anything to that building, a home or a community center or whatever it is, they must mitigate for radon. So I will say that again, because this is the important point of this whole thing, is if they're going to do any work, replace a window, fix a roof, repair a floor, repair a hole in the wall, they must, and they already have a positive for radon, they must mitigate for radon. And I guess the other caveat is if they're using HUD funds. So if they're using tribal funds from your casino or whatever, then they can avoid that requirement. But if they're going to use HUD funds, then they must mitigate for radon. So here's a way to create some friction between the environmental folks and the housing folks. You guys go test for radon, and then you keep a record of that. And if HUD comes in to do any work, you say, oh, this building's tested for radon and it's over 4. You must mitigate. All right. I mean, that one's going to be tough, right? There's going to be some unhappy people. And I don't know about you, but I'd prefer not to make people unhappy. So, but it's up to you. I'm just pointing out it gives you some tools, but also working in cooperation with the tribal housing. Again, they aren't really thinking about this yet, and they don't want to. So you could get trained up. You could be ready to do the testing in cooperation with them and help them out. Make it a cooperative effort. And that's the new opportunity that I'm suggesting to you, but that's just Mansell. It's up to your tribe to decide how you want to implement this. And that second line is a little bit convoluted, but okay, if it's over 4 picocuries and they're doing a repair, they can complete the repair before they do the radon mitigation, but essentially there'll be a legal binding between them and HUD that they must eventually fix the radon problem. So another little bit of a, not really a loophole, but a way for them to delay doing it. So again, this is going to be up to tribal leadership and your housing department to figure out a lot of these, the details. I don't intend for you to read all that information, but the key thing at the bottom is if you want to read HUD legalese, I mean, EPA is bad enough, right? But if you want to read the HUD stuff, you can read it all for yourself. And then after you can't figure it out, like I couldn't, you call and talk to somebody who thinks they understand it, and we'll probably get it maybe mostly right. Because it's a little bit twisted, but it's a great new opportunity to address radon in many locations throughout your tribe. Here in Region 9, the HUD Region 9 that overlaps with us, Morgan Griffin is the contact. And if you send me an email, I can send you this PowerPoint, but if there's any information you take away from this, these would be the contacts that you might want to talk to, because what I can foresee is as we go forward with this, your tribal housing will have one interpretation and leadership is going to be trying to figure out what to do, and you're going to possibly be in the mix. And HUD at least has been willing to talk to me, and hopefully they would talk to you to help you understand it so that you can work with your tribal housing office. Now you can also go directly to headquarters. Danielle, she's the one I've been talking to most of the time. and she's very open to talking to anyone who's going to help figure all this out. But I suggest touching base with your regional guy first, and then if you're still confused and still have questions, of course, feel free to reach out to Danielle. And I think I might be on her VIP list as far as email because she responds to me real quick, but hopefully she'd respond to you too. So that concludes the presentation part, but we have the more interesting part coming up here. Let's see, I will first, I forgot my radioactive sources. You know where my table is, right? And then there's a couple other things there with them, but the orange plate, it's radioactive, so be careful. So Ryder's going to get my radioactive chemicals. So while we're waiting for that, I just want to introduce, now there's different technologies for doing radon. And so just like we're seeing in the rest of the indoor quality world and the outdoor quality world, there are sensors that you can use for radon. And they're getting actually pretty good. But I'd be cautious, of course, make sure I'm using a good quality instrument to make decisions about whether or not to mitigate, because those can be fairly expensive decisions. But this one, for example, just measures continuously and then gives me an average reading. And there is a port where I can download and see the ups and downs of the radon, because radon fluctuates continuously based on what's coming up from the ground, like Ryder showed you, what's leaving, what ventilation is going on, all of that, it will fluctuate. What we're concerned about as far as evaluating for health impact is the average. So this instrument has been in my office, and then I traveled here, and it's been sitting here, and it's reading 1.9 picocuries per liter. So Ryder mentioned the units, but picocuries is a measure of radioactivity, and of course liter is a volume, so it's radioactivity per liter, and so that's what it's reading. So wherever this has been for the last month, which has mostly been around me, I'm doing pretty good on an average, right? So what's the level? This is your quiz. What's the level for action level? 4, all right. What's the WHO action level? World Health Organization. What's the Canadian action level? Do you care? No. I care because, well, we got too many EPA folks in here. I better keep my mouth shut. I mean, EPA picked a level that, you know, considers economics, to be frank. It doesn't fully protect health, but, you know, these numbers are somewhat arbitrary. So anyway, World Health Organization suggests 3. And EPA does say between 2 and 4, it's a judgment call. So if you're working under the HUD relationship, anything over 4 is required for action. But your tribe, just, you know, like putting a thought out there, your tribe could decide that 3 ought to be an action level. We'd have to talk to HUD to find out if you can use HUD funds to fix at 3. That might be a new question for Danielle. One I just thought up. All right. So there's that device. Now this one's a little different. It's called a air thing. And it's monitoring for radon, relative humidity, and couple other parameters, but you got to connect it up to your phone to read it, except that if you pass your hand over it, ooh, yellow. Do it again. It's yellow. I don't know why. Is that bad? Yellow's not good. It was green earlier. Do it again. Maybe it's your hand. No. So it's unhappy about something in here. Maybe it's you. No. Is that why? No. So it does have a response when you wave over it. Yeah, it's supposed to be blue. Yeah, see, it's your fault. No, it's yellow again. But you can also connect it to your phone and actually get readings. And yeah, interesting. I think we're just right on the edge of between the blue, which is better, and the yellow, which is less better. And just while we're talking about this particular instrument, I don't endorse any of these, by the way. I just play with them and try to figure them out. I'm not saying you should run out and buy them. 15 minutes. You're close enough I can read it. The one thing I don't like about this instrument is if your relative humidity is low, it's always red. And, low relative humidity is an issue, but it's, in my mind, as far as air quality issues go, is not the biggest issue. So I don't like the fact that it says it's red just because I live in Flagstaff and it always reads red. I gave up on it because I didn't want my house to always be red. So I use other instruments that give me a reading I like better. So the demonstration I wanted to do is a little bit about radioactivity. Would you mind opening that? So this is a Geiger counter. How many of you have Geiger counters? Now, if you've been listening to the news at all, Russia has been warning us that they plan to use nuclear weapons. And so I have my Geiger counter now. So the rest of you might want to consider getting one too. But I'm currently measuring the gamma radiation in this room. So there's a background that comes from cosmic rays, from the ground, and from radon. So, and all of those other products that you saw on that big chain, the stair step that Ryder showed you, I guess we still have so all of those chemicals are giving off energy, and I'm measuring it right now. And so, and it varies depending on where you are. In Flagstaff, I'm at higher elevation. So, but it's 0.008 millirem per hour. Okay. And that's from all radiation exposures. But what if I get near some uranium? Now, does anybody have this family heirloom? Orange Fiestaware? Anybody? Shh. So, if you have orange Fiestaware, I'll buy it for $1 or so, and you don't want to use it because, and this is from the 50s and 60s, it's painted with uranium. So I'm up to, well, quickly almost up to 2 millirem per hour. So remember before it was 0.008, and now I'm up to 9 millirem per hour. So you don't want to put this under your pillow. And I keep it locked away except when I'm using it for demonstrations. And actually, when I hand it to students, I don't take it out of the plastic bag. Um, so you're supposed to just take it out of the big plastic bag, not the little one. But that's all right. Um, actually, uranium is more dangerous to eat internally because it's very similar to lead, as it's a neurotoxin. The radioactivity is just one of its features, and it's not even the most radioactive chemical that we might get exposed to. Now, so that's gamma radiation. Now, actually, the radiation, the energy that causes the most trouble with the radon and other things getting inside our lungs, where it causes the lung cancer, is alpha radiation. And we don't have the time to get into all the details of that, but you've heard gamma, you've heard alpha. This is an alpha emitter. And so it's not reading anything, much of anything. Now I get closer and closer and closer. And now finally it's reading something. The good news about alpha is it doesn't travel very far and can't get through very much. So as long as it stays out of our lungs, it's not a big deal. But if it gets inside of our lungs, it's a high energy, large particle that can cause damage to our lungs. Now, of course, the gamma radiation in there could be causing some damage also. And hopefully, if we keep it below 4 curies per liter, our lungs will repair themselves faster than they're damaged. But the big issue then is the possibility of lung cancer. And that's what we're concerned about here. So 22,000 deaths per year are attributed to radon, or have they changed that number? Oh, they say 21 now? All right, close enough. So I just wanted to show you a little bit about the energies associated with these chemicals. And it's what we commonly refer to as radioactivity. And you're exposed to them all the time, even though you don't know it. But if you have excessive radon in your house, you're exposed to more. And that's where we tend to see the rates of cancer increase, is when you get above those thresholds. But the official, I should say the health-based response is there is no safe exposure of radon. But we have no choice. If you're going to continue breathing and leaving, you're going to be breathing some radon. But we want to keep it as low as possible. So to summarize, oh, I'm supposed to show you how to use this kit. I don't know if you can hold that up close enough. So don't open the kit until you're going to do the test. That's the first rule. And that's because as soon as you open the kit, the test has started, whether you want it to or not. Now, I've given you 2 different kits here just because that's what I have available, but I've put them together so you get 2 kits. One of them only has 1 level of plastic, and as soon as you open that plastic, the test has begun. The other one does have 2 levels of plastic, and you'll be able to see when you look. But what you're going to do is open the first one, and you get your instructions. Now, to encourage you, my 12-year-old granddaughter did a bunch of these tests, and I handed her the instructions and said, here, figure it out. And she did. So I'm sure that you should be able to figure it out, but it's laid out with some nice pictures so that you can do it. Because as I do it up here, it'll be hard for you, especially in the back, for you to see. But I'll do it anyway. So the test has, so the time I'm going to use Ryder's going to have to follow me around if we're going to. I don't know if there's anybody online. Is there anybody online? All right. Well, we'll keep following around. So, started. So I'm going to use the time right now. And there's a data sheet right here. And to implement the test, I open up the envelope and I push this cardboard back in. And basically, the cardboard is to hold it open. And yes, the cardboard is designed to be permeable to radon, okay? Because I wondered the same thing. I'm sticking that back in there, but that's the way it's supposed to be done. And then it's got a nice little hook. And the instructions will tell you where you should place it. But the general rule is 5 minutes. I better talk faster. The general rule is that you don't want it close to moisture, and you don't want to put it next to like a window or door that leads to the outside. You want to measure something inside, and moisture can actually interfere with the test. So you wouldn't test the bathroom, you wouldn't test the kitchen, you want to test the living room, a bedroom, etc. All of that is in here. And so after, and this kit is 3 to 7 days. Just making sure I got the right one. But read the directions. And after the days are done, you're going to pull this out and throw it away. And by the way, the people at the test center get real picky. They want you to remove this tab. I got a letter back from them saying, you're not removing the tabs. Like, I didn't know because it didn't say anything in there. There's a little sticky in the envelope covered by the white. You remove that, and then you seal it back up. That is when the test is done, is when you seal it. So that's the time you want to record. And then I've already paid for the mailing costs. Actually, I got these free from the vendor, but the mailing costs have already been paid for. You can just take it and drop it in the mail, but with a couple of caveats. You want to finish the test, and you want to take it pretty immediately to the post office and drop it in. You don't want to leave this sitting around for days or whatever, because you've captured the radon in here, but it's going to keep decaying. And if you don't get this to the lab within a few days, it'll be a not valid test. So you want to get it in the mail right away. And in fact, they actually suggest, especially if you're doing a bunch of them, that you might want to box it up and do it priority mail or even FedEx or something, but that's up to you. And just as a note, the second test does not have the free mailer, sorry. I mean, so you might have to put a postage on it. But that is quickly doing the test. It literally minutes, but you got to read those instructions. Like I got 2 minutes. So encourage you to grab a radon test and do your homework. So what are all your homework assignments? Yeah, do the class online if you want, and I'll caveat it. I'll say if you want to learn more about radon, which I hope you do. I do encourage you to do your own home for a radon test. And what was the other assignment? Seems like I gave you 3. 3 assignments. I'll have to come up with another one. But are there any questions? Go ahead.
Who pays for the laboratory analysis?
It's already paid for. It's part of the way the kit is sold and deployed, and I happen to get them for free. But there are test kits, like if you go get it from Home Depot, be really careful, because there are ones that you pay for the kit, and then you find out that they want you to pay more for the lab analysis. So when you're working with vendors, and there's several vendors for these kind of kits, make sure you're getting ones with the lab costs included in the kit. But these kits run well, you can actually buy them in bulk and get a pretty significant discount, but I'll say less than $15. And the lab test is included with that $15 of the initial purchase. So that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
3 questions.
Is gamma and alpha come from your microwaves?
Ooh. No,
Okay.
microwaves have microwave.
Okay.
No, I'm seriously, it's microwave is the name of the form of energy. And I didn't bring my chart, but if I had a few minutes, I could find it on my computer. But microwave is here and gamma is up here.
Got it. And we have a elder village in our tribe, like 22 apartment complexes. So would it work also? I hope this doesn't sound like a dumb question. In apartments as well as homes? Like,
Sure.
Can you do
The test, you mean?
Yeah, the test.
Sure. Multi-family dwellings have a little bit different, and if you look at the standards, there'll be some slight differences, and you don't need to test beyond the first floor. So if you have a multi-story, just test the first floor.
Thank you.
But yeah, the tests will work. But like I say, if you do end up doing a tribal program writing co-op, there'll be some slight differences for multifamily, but same idea. Yep.
Hi, thanks for doing this. I was
Sure.
curious, how many times do you have to retest? Like if you test, should you retest in like 5 years, or do you just have to do it once in a home?
Yeah, well, the guidance is a little bit ambiguous on that question, but I will talk about if you test initially, especially we call these screening tests, and you get above 4 picocuries, we'd actually recommend a second test to verify that the first test was correct. And you can do it a couple different ways, and it depends on how you develop your co-op, but you can either do another short term or you could do a 90-day. I personally would recommend the 90-day before making a decision that'll cost you a lot of money. But generally, 5 years for a retest. But there's also caveats to that, like if you've had an earthquake. I was in the Anchorage, Alaska earthquake that they had a few years ago. And the radon guys in Alaska told everybody, well, you should test for radon. And everybody panicked because they thought it was emergency. Well, it's not quite emergency, but they were saying, the earth rattled, shifted things around, you should test again. And if you do any significant remodel, you should test again.
Are all orange plate have radiation?
Say that again? All
The
what?
orange plate you had up there are
Are all orange plates radioactive?
yeah.
No. Only ones painted with uranium. The newer orange plates, they use something else. So it's got to be back from the 50s and 60s. The Fiesta ware from that time period, they were painting, but they also painted things with lead. And so don't use them anymore. And Delbert, if you have a cabinet full of plates that are orange, I'm coming to test them for you. So, and if they're radioactive, I'll take them off your hands. But if they're not, you can keep eating off of them. I think there was a couple of questions over here.
So is there a certain time that you should test? I mean, is there a better time in the winter, the summer, the fall?
Yeah, good question. Generally, it can matter. It can change depending on what kind of climate you're in. But we generally talk about testing during the winter months, and that's because that's when your house is more closed up. If your house is more open, you're going to have more ventilation, and that's not the worst case. So we're suggesting to test when it would be worst case. But that's also why I recommend the 90-day test, because that gives you an average over a longer period of time. You can test anytime, but you generally want to test whenever your house is closed up. And for some southern folks, that might mean in the summer because you close up with your air conditioning, and in the winter you open up your house because it's pleasant outside. And I'm going to come a snowbird and join you in the winter because I'm in Flagstaff. So it can vary depending on what your climate is. And I think your hand was up, and then we better make room for the next group. Your hand was up. I don't know.
I was just gonna add on the plate thing. There's a session tomorrow on the tribal lead curriculum, and they'll talk more, I think, about plates and other stuff painted with lead, separate from being painted with uranium. So it's just a quick plug.
There you go. Yeah, another neurotoxin. All right. Well, thanks for being here. And if I can be of any help, come up and get your radon test kits. Grab a card. If you don't get one, you can grab a card either way. And look forward to hearing from any of you if I can help you out
There's a
with your
question
radon program.
online. Mansell, there's a question online.
Oh, okay. Question online.
It says, do seasonal variations in weather meteorology impact the intrusion of radon into buildings?
Yes.
It says, I know there are seasonal differences in vapor intrusion, but not sure how similar it is for radon.
It's same for radon. It's the seasonal changes in the house matter a lot, particularly depending on how open and stuff your house is. So they can't hear me. You're doing it in chat.
Oh, actually, they can.
Okay, so yeah, seasonal does matter, and it depends on what kind of climate you're in as to the impacts. But the more open your house is, the more ventilation you got, the less radon you're going to have. I'm going to get out of their way here. But thanks for interjecting.
No problem.